Alex's world shatters when he walks in on his girlfriend Emma and his best friend Jamie entwined in his own bed. The trust he thought was unbreakable is torn to pieces, leaving him reeling with anger, sadness, and a desperate need for revenge. With the support of his sister Sarah, Alex embarks on a meticulous plan to expose their betrayal, turning their worlds upside down and reclaiming his dignity, one painful step at a time. The city lights flickered through the thin curtains, casting a grimy orange glow on the walls of the apartment. Alex fumbled with his keys, the cold metal biting into his fingertips as he finally managed to unlock the door. He pushed it open, the hinges creaking softly, and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The usual hum of the city seemed distant, muffled by the thick walls. Alex kicked off his shoes, the thud echoing through the empty hallway. He hung his jacket on the coat rack, his movements slow and mechanical, a sense of dread already gnawing at the back of his mind. "Emma?" he called out, his voice barely above a whisper. No response. He walked towards the bedroom, his heart pounding in his chest like a drumbeat counting down to an inevitable explosion. The bedroom door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out into the dark hallway. Alex pushed the door open, his eyes widening, in disbelief at the scene before him. Emma and Jamie were in bed, their bodies entwined in a tangle of sheets and limbs. Emma's head rested on Jamie's chest, her dark hair splayed across the pillow. Jamie's arm was draped possessively around her waist, his fingers gently stroking her skin. They were both naked, their bodies glistening with sweat, and the air was thick with the scent of sex. Alex stood frozen, his mind racing as he tried to process what he was seeing. 1,000 thoughts flashed through his head, each one more painful than the last. Betrayal, anger, sadness, confusion. It all crashed down on him at once, leaving him reeling. Emma's eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at Alex, her expression a mix of shock and guilt. "Alex," she whispered, her voice hoarse with sleep and something else, something raw and primal. Jamie stirred, his eyes opening slowly as he looked up at Alex. There was a moment of silent understanding between them, a silent apology from Jamie. That did little to ease the pain. "Alex," Jamie said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry." Alex didn't respond. He couldn't. His throat was tight, his chest constricted, and his eyes stung with unshed tears. He turned and walked away, each step feeling like a stab to the heart. He made his way to the living room, his vision blurry as he sank onto the couch. The room spun around him, the walls closing in as he tried to breathe through the pain. He heard the bedroom door open, soft footsteps approaching, but he couldn't bring himself to look up. Emma knelt in front of him, her hands reaching out to touch his knees. "Alex, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Let me explain." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw the tears streaming down her face. But all he could feel was anger, a burning, all-consuming anger that threatened to consume him whole. "Explain what, Emma?" he asked, his voice cold and hard. "Talked my best friend behind my back. How you lied to me day after day, week after week." She flinched at his words, but he didn't care. He wanted to hurt her, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain he was feeling. "Alex, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I never meant for this to happen. It just did." He scoffed, a bitter sound that echoed through the room. "Just happened, huh? So what, you tripped and fell into his bed, into his arms?" Jamie entered the room, his presence filling the small space. "Alex, man, I'm so sorry," he said again, his voice heavy with regret. "I never wanted to hurt you. You're my best friend." Alex looked at Jamie, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "Best friend," he repeated, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Yeah, you sure showed me." He stood up, his body trembling with the effort of holding back his emotions. "I can't even look at you two right now," he said, his voice shaking. "I need to get out of here." He grabbed his jacket and shoes, his movements jerky and uncoordinated as he rushed out of the apartment, leaving behind the shattered remains of his relationship and his friendship. As he stepped out into the night, the city lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors, he felt a profound sense of loss. Not just of Emma, but of the trust, the friendship, the future he thought he had. It was all gone, swept away in a single heart-wrenching moment. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a dull glow on the unfamiliar surroundings of Sarah's guest room. Alex stirred, his body aching from the tension and lack of sleep. The events of the previous night played out in his mind like a twisted movie reel. The image of Emma and Jamie entangled in his bed seared into his memory. He dragged himself out of bed and made his way to the kitchen, where Sarah was already brewing coffee. She looked up as he entered, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Morning," she said softly, pouring him a cup. "How are you feeling?" Alex took the cup, the warmth seeping into his cold hands. "Like I've been hit by a truck," he replied, his voice hoarse. "But I'm alive, and I'm fucking angry." Sarah nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Good. That anger is going to fuel you. Now, let's make a plan." They sat down at the table and Sarah pulled out her laptop, opening a browser window. "First things first, we need to gather evidence. You need to be able to prove their betrayal without a shadow of a doubt." Alex ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his mind racing. "I need to get into Emma's phone. There has to be something incriminating in there." Sarah's fingers flew over the keyboard as she searched for a reliable spy app. "We can install a monitoring app on her phone. That way, you'll have access to all her messages, calls, and even her location." Alex's eyes narrowed as he thought about the various ways he could make Emma and Jamie suffer. "I could expose them to our mutual friends, make sure everyone knows what they've done. Or maybe I could set up a situation where they have to admit their guilt in front of everyone." Sarah's smile widened, her eyes gleaming with a touch of mischief. "That sounds perfect, Alex. Let's make them regret ever crossing you." A few hours later, Alex found himself back at his apartment, his heart pounding as he let himself in. The Bopwar place was quiet, the air still thick with the scent of their betrayal. He tiptoed down the hallway, his ears straining for any sound. He heard the shower running and knew Emma was in the bathroom. He slipped into the bedroom, his eyes immediately drawn to the rumpled bed where he had found them. He shook off the wave of nausea and turned his attention to Emma's phone, sitting on the nightstand. He picked it up, his fingers trembling as he quickly downloaded and installed the spy app, following Sarah's instructions to the letter. Just as he was finishing, he heard the shower turn off. Panic surged through him, and he hurriedly put the phone back, his heart hammering in his chest. He rushed out of the bedroom and into the living room just as Emma entered from the bathroom, a towel wrapped around her. "Alex," she said, surprise and guilt flashing across her face. "What are you doing here?" He forced a calm expression, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I came to get some of my things. I'll be staying with Sarah for a while." Emma nodded, her eyes downcast. "I'm sorry, Alex, about last night, about everything." He scoffed, a bitter sound that echoed through the room. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Emma. Not even close." With that, he grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing in clothes and personal items, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He could feel Emma's eyes on him, her presence a painful reminder of their shattered relationship. As he zipped up the bag and turned to leave, he paused, looking at her one last time. "You know, I always thought we were happy. I trusted you, Emma. I trusted you with everything." She looked up at him, tears welling in her eyes. "I know, Alex. I'm so sorry." He shook his head, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Sorry isn't good enough. Not this time." And with that, he walked out, leaving behind the remnants of their life together and the woman who had betrayed him. Alex slammed the door behind him, his heart pounding with a mix of anger and satisfaction. He dumped the duffel bag on the floor and turned to Sarah, who was already eagerly awaiting the next steps. "Did you get it?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide, with anticipation. Alex held up Emma's phone, a grim smile on his face. "Yeah, I got it. The app is installed, and I have remote access to everything." Sarah clapped her hands together, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Perfect. Now let's see what kind of evidence we can find." They spent the next few hours poring over Emma's messages, calls, and social media activity. Alex felt a mix of nausea and rage as he scrolled through the incriminating evidence, each message and photo a knife twist in his heart. Sarah, meanwhile, meticulously documented everything, creating a detailed timeline of their betrayal. "Look at this," Alex said, his voice tight with anger as he showed Sarah a series of flirtatious messages between Emma and Jamie. "They've been doing this for months." "Months, Sarah." Sarah's expression hardened as she read the messages. "We'll make them pay for every single one of these months, Alex. I promise you that." Over the following days, Alex and Sarah continued to gather evidence, building an ironclad case against Emma and Jamie. They recorded conversations, took screenshots of explicit texts, and even found compromising photos that left no room for denial. Once they had enough proof to bury Emma and Jamie, Alex made a deliberate decision. He would give them a couple of months to relax, to think they were off the hook. He wanted them to enjoy their stolen happiness, to believe that they had gotten away with it, before he tore their world apart. "So, what's the plan?" Sarah asked, leaning back on the couch, her eyes reflecting the same fiery determination as Alex's. Alex's lips curved into a cold smile. "We give them a false sense of security. Let them think they're in the clear. Meanwhile, we plan the ultimate exposé, a dinner party with all our mutual friends. We'll make sure everyone knows the truth." Sarah's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I love it. Public humiliation is the best revenge." Alex nodded, his mind made up. "Exactly. And to make it even more satisfying, we'll wait until they're comfortable, until they think they've won. Then, we strike." The next few months were a blur of activity for Alex and Sarah. They meticulously planned every detail of the dinner party, inviting mutual friends under the pretense of trying to patch things up with Emma and Jamie. Behind the scenes, they continued to monitor Emma's phone, gathering more evidence and ensuring that their case was airtight. Emma and Jamie, meanwhile, seemed to be living in a bubble of blissful ignorance. They went about their lives as if nothing had happened, their guilt seemingly forgotten. Alex watched from the sidelines, his anger simmering just below the surface, fueled by their apparent happiness and the knowledge of their betrayal. The night of the dinner party finally arrived. Alex could feel the tension building as he prepared the food and set the table. His hands were steady, his mind clear and focused. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when he would reclaim his dignity and make them pay for their sins. Emma and Jamie arrived together, their awkward smiles and nervous glances a clear sign of their residual guilt. The other guests trickled in, unaware of the drama about to unfold. As everyone settled down to eat, Alex took a deep breath and stood up, his heart pounding in his chest. "Before we start," he announced, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him, "I have something to say." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. He looked at Emma and Jamie, their faces pale and worried, and felt a surge of satisfaction. "I know about your affair," he said, his voice cold and hard. "I have proof, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." He pulled out his phone and began to play the recordings, the room filling with the sounds of Emma and Jamie's whispered conversations and promises. He showed the screenshots of their messages, the photo of them together, and watched as the realization and horror dawned on their faces. The room erupted in a mix of gasps and murmurs, the mutual friends turning to stare at Emma and Jamie with a mix of disbelief and disgust. Alex felt a sense of vindication, seeing the pain and embarrassment on their faces. "Alex, please," Emma begged, her voice shaking. "Let me explain." He shook his head, a bitter smile playing on his lips. "There's nothing to explain, Emma. The truth is out and everyone knows what you are." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind the shattered remains of their relationship and the stunned silence of their friends. Sarah followed him, her arm slipping around his shoulders in a gesture of support and pride. As they stepped out into the night, Alex took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure and satisfaction. He had made them pay, and in doing so, he had taken back a piece of his dignity and self-respect. With the dinner party behind them, Alex felt a sense of temporary satisfaction, but he knew he wasn't done yet. He wanted to make sure both Emma and Jamie suffered for their actions, and he had one more ace up his sleeve. Jamie's affair with his boss's wife. Sarah, ever the supportive and vengeful sister, was ready to help him take Jamie down. "So, what's the plan for Jamie?" she asked, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Alex leaned back in his chair, a cold smile playing on his lips. "We expose him at work. Make sure everyone knows about his affair with Mrs. Hartley. His boss will have his head on a platter." Sarah clapped her hands together, excited. "Perfect. Let's start gathering evidence." Over the next few days, Alex and Sarah focused their attention on Jamie. They hacked into his email, accessed his cloud storage, and even managed to get their hands on some compromising photos and messages between Jamie and Mrs. Hartley. The evidence was damning, and Alex knew it would destroy Jamie's reputation at work. Meanwhile, Emma was left to wallow in her embarrassment. The mutual friends who had attended the dinner party made sure to spread the word, and Emma became the subject of whispers and stares wherever she went. She had betrayed a nice man like Alex for a player like Jamie, and everyone knew it. Alex felt a twinge of satisfaction knowing that Emma was suffering, but he also felt a pang of sadness for the man he used to be, the man who trusted her completely. He pushed the emotion aside, focusing on his plan for Jamie. The day of the exposé arrived, and Alex could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he and Sarah made their way to Jamie's office. They had sent an anonymous email to everyone in the company, attaching the compromising photos and messages, and detailing Jamie's affair with Mrs. Hartley. The office was already buzzing with speculation and excitement. Alex and Sarah slipped into the building, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They could hear the murmurs and whispers as they made their way to Jamie's floor. People were pointing and staring, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Jamie's office door was closed, but Alex could see the silhouette of his former best friend pacing back and forth. He took a deep breath and knocked, stepping back as Sarah stood beside him, her expression determined. Jamie opened the door, his face pale and his eyes wide with panic. "Alex, Sarah, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice shaking. Alex's lips curled into a smirk. "We're here to return the favor, Jamie. You remember how you felt when you were exposed, don't you? Well, now it's your turn to experience that pain." He pushed past Jamie and entered the office, Sarah close behind. Alex pulled out his phone and began to play the recordings of Jamie and Mrs. Hartley's intimate conversations, the office filling with the sounds of their whispered promises and plans. Jamie's face drained of color as he listened, his eyes filled with horror and realization. "How did you—" he started, but his voice trailed off as Alex showed him the screenshots of their messages and the compromising photos. The office door burst open, and Mr. Hartley stormed in, his face red with anger. "Is this true, Jamie?" he demanded, his voice booming through the room. "Have you been sleeping with my wife?" Jamie stammered, trying to form a response, but no words came out. He looked at Alex, betrayal and anger etched on his face. Alex felt a surge of satisfaction as he watched Jamie's world crumble around him. "Yes, it's true," he said, his voice cold and hard. "And now everyone knows." Mr. Hartley's fist clenched, and he took a step towards Jamie, his expression threatening. "You're fired, Jamie. Pack your things and get out." Jamie nodded, his shoulders slumped in defeat as he turned to leave. As he passed Alex, he paused, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Alex. I never meant for any of this to happen." Alex scoffed, a bitter sound that echoed through the room. "Sorry isn't good enough, Jamie. Not this time." With that, Jamie left the office, his head hung low, leaving behind the shattered remains of his career and reputation. Alex and Sarah followed, their mission accomplished. As they stepped out into the hallway, they could hear the whispers and murmurs of the other employees, their eyes filled with a mix of disbelief and satisfaction. Alex felt a sense of closure, knowing that Jamie would suffer the same embarrassment and pain that he had caused. The coffee shop was bustling with the usual afternoon crowd, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Alex sat at a cozy corner table, his hand entwined with that of his new girlfriend, Laura. They laughed softly, their eyes meeting in a way that spoke volumes about their growing connection. Alex felt a sense of contentment and happiness that he hadn't experienced in a long time. Laura was everything he needed right now, kind, understanding, and genuinely caring. Laura reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You know, I'm really glad we met, she said, her voice soft and sincere. You're different from what I expected, Alex, in a good way. Alex smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. I'm glad we met too, Laura. You've brought a lot of light back into my life. They shared a moment of silence, their eyes locked, when suddenly, the door to the coffee shop swung open, and in walked Emma. Alex's smile faded as he saw her, a mix of emotions surging through him, anger, sadness, and a twinge of satisfaction. Emma scanned the room, her eyes widening in shock and pain as she laid eyes on Alex and Laura. She froze for a moment, her hand still on the door handle, before slowly letting it close behind her. Alex could see the hurt in her eyes, the realization that he had moved on and was happy without her. He watched as Emma took a deep breath and tried to compose herself, but the damage was done. The sight of him with someone new had clearly shaken her. She ordered a coffee at the counter, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, before turning to find a seat. Her eyes flickered back to Alex and Laura, a look of longing and regret crossing her face. Alex felt a pang of sympathy mixed with his anger. He remembered the good times they had shared, the love that had once filled their relationship. But he also remembered the pain of her betrayal, the way she had torn his world apart. Laura noticed the shift in Alex's demeanor and followed his gaze to Emma. Is that her? She asked softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the coffee shop. Alex nodded, his expression somber. Yeah, that's Emma. Laura squeezed his hand again, offering him a reassuring smile. You're stronger than you think, Alex. You've come so far, and you deserve to be happy. Alex returned the smile, grateful for Laura's support and understanding. He turned his attention back to Laura, pushing aside the lingering thoughts of Emma and focusing on the present moment. Meanwhile, Emma sat alone at a table near the window, her coffee untouched. She looked out at the street, her mind a whirl of memories and regrets. She thought about Jamie, about how he had resented her for losing his best friend and his job. Their relationship had crumbled under the weight of their actions, and now she was alone, watching the man she had hurt find happiness with someone else. Tears welled up in her eyes as she watched Alex and Laura laugh together, their happiness a stark contrast to her own solitude. She took a deep breath, trying to hold back the sobs that threatened to escape. She had made her choices, and now she was paying the price. As Alex and Laura stood up to leave, Alex glanced over at Emma one last time. He saw the tears in her eyes, the pain etched on her face, and for a moment, he felt a twinge of sadness for her. But he quickly pushed it aside, remembering the agony she had put him through. With Laura by his side, Alex walked out of the coffee shop, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts and her regret. He knew he had to move forward, to build a new life for himself, and he was determined to do just that.